Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and we're here for another episode of Wuxia Weekend. I'm here with Kenny, Lady Cao Feng, and Adam, and we're going to be talking about House of Flying Daggers, a 2004 Zhang Yimou movie. This is a film about two constables that are investigating the House of Flying Daggers, and one of them has to escort a blind dancer through perilous terrain. And obviously it leads to a lot more than that, but we'll get into the sort of details as we go. So before we get into the story of it, what did you guys think of this movie?
I really enjoyed it. I thought the fight scenes were very well done, and the sort of all the plot twists that came up throughout the movie were I wouldn't say they were unexpected. You can sort of meta it. You expect something to be up when there's so few characters introduced, and you kind of can guess the twist of coming a mile off, but it was still quite interesting to see how it played out on screen. I really liked Kaneshiro Takeshi as Jin in the movie. I thought he played the playboy part really well, and to be honest, I'm a bit jealous of Zhang Ziyi being caught between Andy Lau and Kaneshiro Takeshi. That's a very enviable position to be in.
I really enjoyed the movie. I also thought the fight scenes were great. I, unlike Kenny, did not see all the plot twists that came. I expected some, but not, I guess, to the degree that they happened. And I liked the coloring of the movie. I thought it was really well done. I'm not one of those people that likes to see a movie right away after I finished watching it. And I really wanted to watch this one right away. And Kenny stole my line. I would have liked to be caught between the two gentlemen in this movie, too. So, I mean, it was great. The actors were awesome, and the music was delightful. So, yes, I loved the movie.
Yeah, this is just a fantastically made movie. I agree with everyone's impressions on it. It's really well acted. It's the fight scenes are amazing. Just the direction in general is really impressive. And and there's interesting effect though that it had on me, and I almost wonder if it was intentional because they pile on. It's because looking at Hero, as we're kind of connecting this to Hero a bit. With Hero, I commented on how because we're getting so many versions of the same story. I had kind of a disconnect, kind of an intellectual disconnect from the characters because I'm thinking about them at a bit of a remove, which was an intentional effect in that movie. With this, I'm not going to go into specifics yet till we get into the synopsis, but there's so many twists in a row that during the later part of the movie, I was just kind of wary of is this character really what they say they are? Is this like some kind of put on? And it's like I almost feel like based on this being a follow-up to Hero that in some movies I'd say that's a flaw. I wasn't engaged. There were too many twists, but I almost feel like it's an effect the movie was going for, perhaps, or maybe I'm reading too much into it. I'm not sure.
And I should say that because you mentioned the fight choreography that the fight choreography was done by Tony Ching Sui Tung, who we've mentioned before, and I believe he did the fight choreography for Hero, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think that what was it? I saw this a very long time ago, and so I saw it again for this viewing. But I think that I was also, when I first saw it, surprised by the twist at the end. So I didn't see it coming, and it was hard for me to tell how obvious it was, knowing what was coming down the road this time. But the thing that really struck me about it, the time that this week when I was watching it was the music and and just the fact that it's really, because whenever I talk about House of Flying Daggers and I compare it to Hero, I'll often say that it's like more it's got more of the martial world, and it's got it's more adventurous, but it really is only about 3 characters, this film, and so it's very minimal. It's almost more minimalist than Hero in a lot of ways, and so yeah, so I think it's a good movie. I think this is probably the for me, out of the 3 movies we're doing for Zhang Yimou, this is probably my favorite, because I feel like it's a little bit more. It feels more like a classic wuxia to me. It feels like it's got sort of the more of the adventure. The characters are more the kind of characters that you would encounter in a wuxia movie or story, and I think that the fighting is a little bit more entertaining for me than the fighting that was in Hero. But yeah, so why don't we get right into it? And I do want to apologize to the listeners because I have a cold and it might be affecting my voice over the course of the podcast. But we're going to go through the story bit by bit. So the movie opens up and they're at police headquarters in Fengtian County, and they've been told. We open up and we see the 2 constable characters, Leo and Jin, as they're called in the subtitles. And Leo is played by Andy Lau, and Jin is played by Kaneshiro Takeshi, who I think was in Redcliffe, and so they basically find out that they have 10 days to catch the new leader of Flying Daggers, because apparently they just assassinated the previous leader, and it took them 3 months, and so now they got 10 days, and they're going to follow a lead at the Peony Pavilion, where Jin has to go in sort of undercover, and then while he's there, he's supposed to find out which of the dancers is connected to the House of Flying Daggers, so that they can arrest her. And so yeah, so why don't we start with I think the Peony Pavilion scene is sort of the big opener on this one. So any thoughts on that scene?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure, but does Zhang Ziyi have like a background in martial arts or dance? Because
Dancing.
I think dancing, yeah, because she definitely was very good at the poses and the dance movements there.
Yeah.
And there was also the fighting scenes, I guess, but it just struck out to me like how she did the classic Chinese dancing very well.
Yeah,
I looked up her background on X. She is so good at it. But go on, you were gonna.
Oh no, I was just going to confirm what you were saying, which is she's got like a really she went to like a prestigious school, and I think she studied from a very young age, and so she's got like real dancing ability, and I think it's just obvious. I don't think CGI was good enough at this time to
you could not CGI that kind of thing. So no,
this was really good use of her talent there.
Yeah, I loved the Echo game. I thought her movements in that were just astounding. You could tell that she must have had some kind of dancer's background just by how flexible she was, and the movements weren't sloppy. They were very tight and, pointed toes and everything. I thought that was a great scene and a showcase of her dancing ability. But I really like the idea of the Echo game too. I thought it was kind of like a neat kind of setup.
Yeah, no, and about the Echo game, one thing I've always wanted, because I like the concept up until we get to the point where he throws all of the beans, and then she is supposed to that part is the one where I always kind of say, well, how is she supposed to, how do they even know she's doing it at that point?
Yeah, I know. It's like, not only would she have to be good enough to do it, the guy throwing the beans has to be good enough to know if she's doing it right. She just go, he's not going to know. I'm just going to do this one, this one, this one.
No, I think we do have to spoil the end of the movie just to talk about this film, so I'm going to do that now if people are okay with it. We know by the end that she's not even blind and that he's in on it. So the other interesting thing about this scene is this is really just a show for whoever they want to get to believe that this is a legitimate arrest. I
had to watch this scene again after watching the movie. I'm like, how does this scene play out when you know everything about these characters? And it's very different.
Well, one of the things I like about this film is if you watch Andy Lau's performance early on, knowing what you know down the road, I feel like you can see him, you can see his thoughts even when his character is smiling when he should be really upset. You can kind of see the conflict in his eyes. so I feel like a lot of the stuff is present earlier. Like you see signs of what's to come. But yeah. So anyways, they end up. She ends up during the Echo game trying to draw a sword on him and attacking him. She actually takes his sword with like a silk ribbon or something, and there's a fight, and then she gets paralyzed and thrown into the pool and brought to the station where they tell her that they're gonna torture her if she doesn't talk about the House of Flying Daggers, and so this is when they concoct the idea of trying to use her to get to the new leader. And so and then what they end up doing is Jin breaks in, rescues her, and then is supposed to try to sort of seduce her on the road, and then work his way into the House of Flying Daggers so that they can find the new leader and arrest or kill them. And so as they're fleeing together, we get hints of an emerging love story between Jin and Mei, the blind dancer, and we also have this scene where the soldiers from, I don't know if it's a constabulary office or I think they're military inspectors, because he mentions the general sort of stepping in, and they call their men soldiers, but I don't know. But whatever it is, the enforcement officials that's part of their police office chase after them, and he does this little trick where he fires his arrows at them, and it just sort of penetrates their clothing but doesn't harm them, and that's enough to at least initially convince her that he might be legit. But again, he's really the one being tricked here, not her. So it's kind of interesting that you're sort of like when you rewatch this movie, you're sort of constantly going back and forth, being aware of these things, and it has an unusual effect. So I don't know. I don't want to go too far ahead of myself here. So do you guys have any thoughts on that sequence or the jail or anything else?
I don't know, it might be me, but I found a little bit of sexual tension in the scene where he was showing her showing she's blind
device,
and
right? Yeah.
right. The way that I guess he was so close to her and touching and everything. I know she's supposed to be blind, but for me, there felt like there was some kind of sexual tension, and I kind of felt at that point that maybe they had known each other before. Even back in the scene with the Echo game when he was throwing the pebbles and he gets these little smirks on his faces, I kind of felt like that there was something up. And I don't know, at the very beginning, I guess I kind of thought that he was the new leader of the House of Flying Daggers, and he was throwing everybody else off with this blind girl. That was just me. And then as things unfolded, you get the real story, but I was just kind of thinking I had this feeling that he knew her more than he was actually putting out there, because if she was a member of the House of Flying Daggers, and I already had this thought that maybe he was the new leader, but just covertly trying to get rid of the soldiers and everybody else to get off the House of Flying Daggers trail, then there was some kind of sexual tension between the two. But that was my mind working.
Yeah, I was distracted enough by her like dancing in that scene that I wasn't paying enough attention to Leo in that scene to pick up any of that. So,
well, I think you are right, because when you see that scene again in the police office, it's clear. I mean, and especially when what the rest of the movie. He's obviously not planning on torturing her, but I think there is sexual tension, but there's also kind of a hint of what's to come as well, in terms of how dark the story gets. But yeah, so then they go off on and continue on, and they stop so that she can take a bath, and Jin sort of pretends like he's going to go into the woods, but he really just sort of sets up his sword on a tree so that it continues to ping as if he's off in the distance, and he sits there and watches her, and she's fully aware that he's doing this. And so then they dress her as a man so that she can go about in disguise, and this is when they have their first kiss and they start to make out, and then we suddenly get this shift in point of view where we see it almost is like an onlooker is watching them, and May stops, and you know, and it's sort of, you know, so what starts out as sort of a passionate moment becomes very cold, and she asks, because we've already established in the movie at this point that he's a playboy, and so she says, like, can a playboy like you be for real? And this is like a recurring thing that gets thrown at him from her, and so after that they they continue on, and then there's this scene in a field where again they have like a tender moment where he brings her to a field and she's delighted that there are flowers there, and this is where we start to hear that lovers theme in the background, and then the soldiers show up again, but this time the soldiers do not back down. They're intent on causing harm, and he has to kill some of them to stop them, and she is also sort of throwing her daggers and using her staff. So we get a really spectacular fight sequence here, and it ends when some mysterious person in the trees throws some sharpened wooden projectiles to kill the soldiers. And so, you know, we'll go on after that, but I want to gather some people's thoughts.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the sort of the interactions between Jin and Mei, so in this sort of little sequence, because I don't know, like something about the way Kaneshiro Takeshi plays Jin is just really charming, and you could really see like someone falling head over heels in love with him, just because like he's so he is suave. He's like, he oozes like sex appeal.
Yeah.
Is what I would say, and you know, and to the point where we mentioned where they have like a passionate kissing scene, and she just suddenly like stops. I guess now that you mentioned it, the shift in point of view is actually quite significant, because it means that maybe she realizes that Leo is in close by, and she doesn't want to, you know, do anything or frisky in front of him, because she knows either she knows how he feels for her, or, you know, she doesn't want to be seen as compromising the mission in any way or whatever.
I totally agree with Kenny. When I noticed that the point of view had changed, and that the camera angle kind of changed, as if we were looking in on them and kind of like through someone else's eyes. And when she stopped, it kind of made me wonder more if about her and Leo, because we by now know that Leo is kind of following them. So it kind of made me wonder more how closely connected these two were, and if she was, you know, if she didn't want to do anything in front of him. Plus, I was also wondering if he had said the same line to her, "Don't fall for him," knowing that he was a playboy, or, you know, was going to pretend to be like one, and then he's telling Jin, "Don't fall for her," because he knows the potential dangers of what could happen if these two fall in love with each other.
That is an interesting point, because we only see him talk to Jin, but it's entirely possible he's going up to Mei and talking to her, or that he had a chance to speak with her when she was in the jail. I think it's also interesting, this scene at the end of it. You know, she says, "I know you're for real," to Jin, and she starts embracing him, and they begin to kiss, but then he stops it, because of the emotional weight of having to kill his own men and realizing that he might be in some serious danger now, you know, is starting to take its toll on him. And so then we go to the next scene where he's in the woods talking with Leo, like you said, and Leo, who again I think we already had an earlier scene where he had warned him to not fall in love with her, but now he explains to him that, oh no, the plan has changed. Those guys were ordered by the general. Now the general's taken over, and I don't think we even find out the general's name. I could be wrong, but I think they just call him the general. But we know that he's taken over the mission, and that he wanted to see blood because he felt that they needed to shed real blood for the roost to work. And so we also get a clear hint of the future where Leo. Where Jin says, do you know how I felt killing my own men? And Leo responds, saying, I felt worse. I'm tortured. And the look on Jin's face is kind of puzzled because it just doesn't compute right away. And the expression on Leo's face is I don't know. It just doesn't seem to match the events that are going on. So we definitely kind of get a hint of what's up. And at this point, Jin just basically says that he quits. And then we get the next scene, which is the campfire ruins scene where he and Mei are together. And she's sort of trying to talk him into like there's this whole playful exchange they have about him being the wind. And as I think his nickname is the wind. And a free spirit and a playboy. And she basically is trying to get him to sort of, stop blowing around and just be with her, and he says, that's like not in my nature, and so she tells him to go away and says, I don't need you anymore, and he leaves on his own, and she leaves on her own, and then that leads us to the bamboo forest scene where she's surrounded by another group of soldiers that begin attacking her, and this bamboo forest scene is, I think, an amazingly shot scene. It's really gorgeous, and it kind of harkens back to a scene in Touch of Zen, and so as she's fending off these soldiers, Jin returns, and they're they kill some of the soldiers, but they're ultimately surrounded in a field of sharpened spikes, and they're encased in bamboo shafts, and then they're released when the soldiers who are about to surround them and presumably finish them off or capture them are killed by the House of Flying Daggers, who show up at that moment. So I don't know. I would want to gather your thoughts on up to this point as well before moving on.
Oh yeah, the bamboo forest scene was amazing. Just the way those officers were like shimmying upside down the bamboo. While waving weapons around was pretty cool, and they just pull bamboo out of nowhere to throw at the couple who were trying to run away. It was just mildly amusing to me, and the trap that they set at the end with all the bamboo spikes coming, just popping straight up out of the ground was, I don't know, it seems entirely plausible for for that level of technology in the time, but it's still pretty impressive that they could rig the entire floor of the forest to pop up in sharpened bamboo.
Yeah, I like that the bamboo is being used as weaponry here. That really added to the overall look, especially with this one scene where the bamboo shaft smashes and it splinters into like I don't know what it just kind of opens up like a homemade broom or something. And it looked really spectacular.
Yeah, and I think one thing we didn't really mention was previously when they were in the flower field, they get rescued by we later find out it's Leo, but the weapon that they used to rescue that he uses to rescue them, instead of being like signature flying daggers or whatever, he uses like sharpened bits of wood.
Yep.
To sort of like conceal his identity, and I just thought that was like a little interesting thing there, which sort of I don't know, it's sort of like a bit of foreshadowing as well, that there's someone with incredible like hidden weaponry skills following and protecting them in the background, who isn't just the House of Flying Daggers, and but here we actually get the House of Flying Daggers coming to rescue them, and We sort of get the first. Well, we've already seen Mei using the daggers at some point before, but we sort of see like a higher level of mastery being demonstrated by who we assume is the leader of the House of Flying Daggers. What do they call her?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
Nia.
yeah.
And that scene
Uh,
mirrors this scene a lot too, because in that scene they're kind of like the soldiers are sort of surrounding them and encasing them, and then he kills them with the spikes. And in this scene, the bamboo shafts are encasing them, and then she slaughters the soldiers, and then she cuts them free from the bamboo with a thrown dagger. I mean, she has some really impressive skills when you see her.
they all have some pretty impressive dagger skills, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I also want to mention one thing is that I like how sort of vulnerable the characters feel here. Like they're all doing really fantastic things, but when it comes to being overwhelmed by sheer numbers, it's not like in Hero where you had the couple there like slicing through shields and like barging all the way into the Imperial Palace. Like you don't get the feeling that the people in this in House of Flying Daggers could do the same thing, but you also get a sense for the level of like physical accomplishment that isn't outside of the realm of believability, because they get tired, their weapons break, they take wounds, and they can't defend against like attacks from all sides.
Yeah, it's easy when you have characters that have all these crazy powers to slip into a movie feeling like it has no stakes. But this like during that scene, I was really like very concerned. It's like it just really creates this impending feeling of them being overpowered as it goes on, despite how powerful they are.
And
I totally
go ahead.
I totally agree with what everyone is saying. It's just these characters, you feel like that they could die at any moment from all these onslaughts and attacks. Where, as in Hero, I wasn't here for the discussion, but I just thought that they were kind of beyond superhuman, and I didn't expect them to like really die. I realized that they, were pretending to be dead pretty early in the movie, but when it actually came down to the ending and they died, I was kind of shocked. So here I'm expecting pretty much everybody to die at some point, because they feel more grounded and more real and more vulnerable and more human, even with their fantastic and almost surreal abilities. They feel like more real people than some superhuman character, I guess.
What's an interesting thing about this movie is that, like, at the beginning when the text comes up on the screen, it's setting up this conflict between the corrupt government officials and the House of Flying Dagger stuff, and it's like I felt like it was going to be a different kind of movie, but the movie ultimately doesn't care. It's all it cares about is what happens to these people, these three people in the story, and that the larger conflict is kind of just on the sidelines to an extent.
Yeah, the fight choreography is pretty interesting. I think especially when you get to the end scene, which I guess we'll talk about when we get there. But I feel like it's got a nice blend of really over the top stuff, but also kind of like you said, there is a gritty peril to a lot of it. There's a set like characters are capable of really amazing things. Like he fires 4 arrows in one shot, and at his own men, and just sort of gets them through the sides of their gowns without harming them, which is, nobody could really do that. But I feel like in this setting, if those arrows really hit you, they're quite lethal. So it's an interesting approach, and I think we really kind of see it on display at the end. But after they're captured, number one, as the soldiers are encircling them, Mei says to him, "You shouldn't have come back," and he says, "I came back for you." And this is important because she says it again at the end of the movie. And when when they're brought back to the House of Flying Daggers, it becomes clear to Jin that Mei is not blind, and there's a little bit of a moment where he's tricked by them, where a woman who says that she's Nia, who it turns out she isn't, is offers to be a matchmaker for him and May. And then when he goes to thank her, she has a net and snare him, and they tie him up, and they bring in Leo, and he's bound too. And then May comes in and pours, I think, tea for Nya, and he begins to realize that she's been doing this as a trick for the House of Flying Daggers, and so this is where I think the movie starts to turn very hard into the love triangle. That this is like where it becomes a different movie. Like up until this point, you still feel like the movie was going a certain direction, and then here it really just becomes this explosion of melodrama between these three characters. And so when they bring out Leo, on the surface to execute him, Nya takes him into the woods and then releases him and says he's done a good job. And then it becomes clear he's a mole, and he's been working for the House of Flying Daggers as a government plant for like 3 years. And it also becomes clear he's in love with May, and that this is sort of torturing him, and that's what that whole conversation between him and Jin was about earlier. And he's given permission to see May again, so you get the sense that there are like rules in this House of Flying Daggers. And you also get the sense that, like, what are they fighting for? Because, like, on the one hand, you have this oppressive, ineffectual empire that they're resisting, but the House of Flying Daggers seems pretty crushing to be a part of too. So, and I think that's what leads to a lot of the stuff that emerges in the end. And so then when he goes to see May, he, it's a little ambiguous exactly what their relationship is. Like clearly he's in love with her, and clearly she knows he's in love with her, and she walks up to him and is tender to him. But I almost get the impression that there's a strong possibility that she had been seducing Leo as well the whole time. That this was sort of part of how they got Leo to do what they wanted him to do, because there's like a lack of reciprocation on her part that I don't think is fully explained just by the presence of Jin.
And there's also the mention by the madam or the stand-in for Nya that it's not the first time
Yes.
he uses her beauty to seduce men.
Yeah, and so that's what tipped me off. So I think that what she was saying is that he was also someone that was seduced, and also just the way he talks about it. He says, like, you're the love of my life, and she doesn't really say anything back. Like he says all these like really big things, and her reactions are very minimal. Like they're like they're the most you can get away with, like, not saying. Do you know what I mean? It's like and then this leads to a really dangerous situation where he starts kissing her, and she kisses him back a little bit, but then she tries to stop him, and he gets very aggressive and basically tries to rape her. And Nya throws a dagger in his back and tells him, like, do not do that, and to keep the dagger in your back, because I'm going to send you back to the capital, and it'll be more convincing if you have a dagger in your back than if you don't. And then she dismisses him, and then she orders May to kill Jin. And so May takes Jin out into the fields where they had that big battle before, or at least fields that are very similar to them, and she ends up cutting his ropes, and then they make love, and then they part ways, and he tries to convince her to go on the road with him, and she at some point during this, she says to him, we're like on two different sides of a big battle here. If we try to be together, one of us is going to have to die. Or I think she says, if we meet again, one of us is going to have to die. And so he leaves, and then she kind of is standing there against the fall landscape and thinking, and then she ends up going after him. And right when she sets out to get him, or to go to him, she gets a dagger in the heart from Leo, and then this sort of leads to the big battle between Leo and Jin, and then that really strange Mexican standoff at the end of the battle where May gets up and she has a dagger in her chest, and Leo is about to throw the dagger from his back at Jin, and she's threatening Leo that if he tries that, she's going to pull the dagger out, and Jin is saying to her, no, if you pull the dagger out, you'll die, and it gets very complicated. So I know we covered a lot there, so why don't we just whatever your thoughts are.
I find it interesting that in the scene where Leo was not quite forcing himself onto Mei yet, but she has the same look on her face as like when she was acting blind. I'm not sure if there was any significance in that, but I just thought that was a noticeable point in that scene.
Which scene was that again? I'm sorry.
It was just before Leo forces himself onto Mei, like when they're kissing and she's like slightly kissing back, and then she's got like the whole glazed, faraway, blind look that she had for the whole time when she was with Jin.
That's true, and it also is kind of it's the look that she got when she was with Jin, and they were about to make love, and then we get that change in point of view, and then she kind of, just sort of suddenly stops. But Jin's reaction was the opposite of Leo's reaction, and so yeah, I don't know. That is an interesting point, though.
Yeah, and also so the part where Leo's dagger, when Mei tries to chase after Jin and Leo's dagger hits her in the heart, I thought it was like a pretty interesting use of daggers there, and how he hid a dagger behind another dagger kind of thing to try and stop her from defending against it. It's like he knew very well what Mei's dagger technique capabilities were and how to control it.
And she also said, when he talked to her after he stabbed her, that she knew he was going to do that, which she kind of indicated earlier too, where she said, if we meet again, one of us is going to die, and so there's a sense of inevitability in all this. And also, I guess one point that we forgot about is the snow. They sort of fight. Again, it's this weird thing because I found the final fight incredibly gritty. This is the first time we see swords getting like nicked and getting these are really battered weapons by the end of this duel between Jin and Leo. But it's also one of these battles where the snow starts falling and everything feels very surreal. And so there was this combination of grit and surreality that I thought was kind of interesting. But I don't know, what do people think of the fight itself?
Yeah, it was definitely very gritty, and it was like a build-up of emotion on both sides. You can really sort of feel their despair and anger. You got sort of the. I mean, they both of them were quite despairing at the fact that Mei was now dead, but Jin had the additional element of sort of anger at the fact that Leo was the one who killed her. And I think this is actually, this is the first that Jin knows that Leo is part of the House of Flying Daggers. All along, they've been addressing each other as sort of brother, and you get the impression that they were close friends while they were quote unquote working together in the police office or whatever, whatever they call it, the magistrate's office or whatever. And it's all come to a head for Jin here. I mean, now his best friend has betrayed him and killed, or betrayed him and the country in his mind, and also killed the woman that he fell in love with. So you can really feel the sort of raw emotion coming from him during that fight as well. And I really like how the snow starts coming, because snow, I think, generally is it's sort of symbolism there of being despair, not quite despair, but mourning, I guess. Sort of like it adds its whole depressive tone to the whole thing. Like, I don't know, like there's a slight difference between using rain in the scene and using snow in the scene, for example. I feel like they give different impressions. When it's snow, it's sort of like it's like a whole bitterness to and despair to things, whereas with rain it would just be like sadness and melancholy. Like I don't know, like that's my impression of like using snow and rain and as sort of backdrop for these sort of things.
Another thing with the snow too is there's points where it seemed like it was almost going to erase them both. You know, it was like there was like
Mhm.
lots of white on the screen. And I mean, they, it was just. I mean, it goes back to kind of despair and futility thing. It's like at this point they're fighting over something that's lost, and there's, no one's going to win this fight in any meaningful way. It's just, I mean, usually the big fight at the end of a movie, there's some kind of chance of triumph or something. But this is, it's pretty bleak at that point.
Yeah, it's like a total lose-lose situation at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of the men really gets what they want. The woman that they both love is dead, and they've kind of betrayed each other in a way, because Jin has fallen in love when Leo told him not to, and there's just so much going on between the two of them that and the snow falling, I thought was going to bury them all and just kind of wipe the slate clean, kind of. That, once the snow covered them all, it was all done and everything. But then there's still a little bit more to come.
Yeah, and and they're just hacking at each other in this. Like this
Yes.
is like a very messy looking battle by design. I think like it's like anger. It's not because we saw their skill in earlier fight scenes, and we see some of that here, but a lot of it devolves into them slicing each other up. One like they get to a point where like they're each taking turns hacking at each other, and again, not enough to kill each other, it seems, because I think they both survive this. It looks like both of them are going to be alive when this ends. And that makes me wonder what's going to happen when, because they're going to be there together. And do they kill each other, or do they go their separate ways? They certainly aren't going to be, they're not going to be able to mend the bridge that just burned there. But yeah, so I don't know. What about the Mexican standoff sequence? To me, that's like that's where it really gets like emotional. Is that scene? That's sort of like the emotional crown of the whole movie.
It's funny because it reminds you a bit of like that parable or story from the Bible of King Solomon and the child that's being argued over by the two women here.
And one is split him in half. Yeah.
Yeah. And here in this case, it's like Jin is basically saying, no, I'll die. There's no point pulling it out because I'll just go closer towards Leo and he'll kill me before your dagger gets there anyway, so it's pointless. Whereas, Leo's just like, fine, whatever. I'll just throw the dagger and then we can all die together. And I don't know. It feels like from the scene that Leo's love is more of like a possessive one rather than one of like
yeah, definitely
like full on.
Yeah, I was thinking obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah, he feels he's the one that's wronged, but there's just no moral basis to his.
Well, he even says to her, I think at one point, like, you don't have to be with me, but you can like not be with anybody else, basically. Like,
right.
That's...
so he's pretty possessive, I think. And I think having Andy Lau in that role it worked really well. Like he really gets that, that character effectively. But what about her? Like, okay, so we know she didn't seem to really reciprocate Leo, but what about Jin? Because she never actually says to Jin, oh yeah, I love you, or I love, you know what I mean? Like, at the end, it's always, you shouldn't have come. And that could have multiple meanings. And she kind of has a look in her eyes that says, I love you. But maybe it's not for love. Maybe it's for something else,
I don't know. I feel like this is like gone.
I was just going to say, I thought that they're out of the two of the arms of the triangle. I thought the love between Jin and Mei was more true and real and pure, and the love that Mei and Leo experienced was more of an obsession, one-sided. I thought that when he came back the first time, I could tell that he loved her, but when she decided that she was going to go to him, that's when she realized that she was in love with him. And those words are kind of haunting to me. Why did you come back?
So what do you think she meant by that?
Know.
What do you think she meant by that? Like,
I think it goes with if what did she say? Oh, if we meet again, one of us is going to have to die, knowing that she already had strong feelings for him, that if he came back, one of them was going to die, and it was more likely going to be him. I thought that's what she meant. And that was her way of saying kind of that I feel really strongly for you. Remember in Ghost how there, I think it was Patrick Swayze couldn't say I loved you. He just said ditto the whole time. I think that was her ditto in a way. That was her way of saying that that I love you is why did you come back?
Okay.
Yeah. And I could see more of a passion in her eyes when she looked at him as opposed to when she looked at Leo.
I definitely think there was more passion. I just wonder how much love there was. I don't know.
I think she loved him.
Okay.
Well,
that's the counter question: is that if she wasn't in love with him, what motivated her to pull the dagger out of her heart and save him? That's the question. I mean, what other motivation is there?
Well, because she said if we meet again, one of us is going to die. So maybe it was like a suicidal impulse on her part. Do you know what I mean? Like,
could be.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
I just again, I found myself getting more suspicious of their love the more I watched it. I can't really make a good argument for why, but
I know what you mean. Well, like I said during the beginning and during when we were first giving our first impressions, watching this the first time, at this point in the movie, we'd had so many twists, like even weird twists, like, oh, this isn't really the head of the House of Flying Daggers, it's this person, which didn't even really have any plot potential, but it was kind of another twist thrown in there on top of all the plot relevant twists. I was just so suspicious during this scene going, well, is this person playing this person or this person playing this person? But
yeah, maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was just sort of getting too paranoid about what people's motives were.
The first time watching it, I was that way. It was just that after the movie ended and I had time to digest it all, I thought, okay, there wasn't another twist coming, so I think she really did love him.
Okay. Well, and the interesting thing that I thought happened in this scene too is that Leo doesn't throw that dagger. He, that
was interesting.
That was sort of a an unexpected move, and again, I mean, I guess you could sort. Oh, did you want to say something?
I was gonna say that he didn't throw that dagger because I think he knew that she was serious about pulling it out. So if she thought that he was going to throw it, she would pull it out and she would die, and then no one would be able to have her. So he was kind of getting what he wanted on his obsessive end.
Okay.
That was my thinking. I'm like, I guess, the pure romantic, and her taking the dagger out, like Adam had said, was her ultimate sacrifice, to sacrifice herself for the man that she loved. Yes, it was suicidal, but it was the ultimate act that you can do for someone is to die for them.
See, I think on Leo's part, there was a bit of denial in himself. Like, to that moment, I think he was sort of thinking, no, there's a chance that she will still choose me.
Uh-huh.
So, if I pretend to throw the dagger out, she won't really pull the dagger out of her heart and kill herself because, because she will eventually end up with me. I'm the only one who deserves her, and it would be a bluff to try and not drive Jin into despair. But I guess that maybe that would have happened. Like if he pretended to throw the dagger and she didn't actually pull the dagger out of her heart, then Jim would have just probably been. I don't know. It'd be hard to say. Like, he'd probably be glad that she didn't kill herself. At the same time, you're like, oh, so you didn't actually love me after all, then.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. I like that take on it.
I like that too.
Yeah, he's trying to reveal that the love wasn't real. That's good.
Yeah. So I don't know. General, what did you guys think of the ending? Did you like it, or was it too much of a downer, or was it just right?
No, this movie felt like it was going to have a downer ending from very early on. So I was steeled for a downer ending. Definitely.
Okay.
I mean, I would have liked the happy ending, but I was ready.
I actually sent you the message on Facebook. You set me up. That's
Yeah.
2 sad endings in one week, man.
Well, I can pretty much guarantee that the next movie does not end on that note. It ends on an uncomfortable note, but not on a sad one. I think not in this way. But yeah, I know. I thought it was I thought it was sort of the ending that you kind of had to get in a movie like this.
Yeah.
It just felt like the ending that was going to happen. So it would have been a surprise if they had ended up happy and together for me. That would have been like a twist ending in this case.
Yeah, that would have been, yeah.
But because you can just feel it, everything, like the music is telling you, like everybody is telling you that this is going to just go in a, somebody is going to die direction. And speaking of the music, I really like that the movie ends literally with an opera. Like there is like a Western style opera being sung at the end of the movie.
Kathleen Battle.
Yeah, it was, and I thought, yeah, she's like an actual opera singer, and I thought, number one, that the melody both in that song and throughout the movie, because they play the theme over and over again, sounds an awful lot like the love theme from The Godfather. Like those first few notes seem really similar to me. I don't know if that was just me being crazy and overthinking it. But
when you mentioned it to me beforehand, the first few notes I definitely hear it. I don't know if it means anything, but I hear what you're hearing there, definitely.
Okay.
I just put my hand in the air and say I've never seen The Godfather, so...
Oh, but haven't you heard the theme? You've heard the love theme, right?
I've not heard the theme for it either.
Okay, we're going to have to remedy this soon, because The Godfather is a very important sort of reference point in pop culture that I want to make sure that we can get over to you.
We can now justify it as a Wuxia Weekend movie somehow.
Well, there's a connection. There's a connection there. There's a martial world in The Godfather,
The martial world is basically like the underworld, the criminal underworld of.
That's true.
But yeah, so detour aside, I thought the music in this is fantastic. I really like that song. After I watched the movie again last night, I listened to that song on my player 20 times between then and now. And so, to me, it's like when you rewatch a movie, it's like that means it's a good movie. Mm-hmm. That means it's a very good song if I'm listening to it 20 times.
Well, the song was completely in my head when I got that email from you, and I instantly had those notes in my head because the song was already there. So yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But and you're looking at me, Dion, like I'm crazy. So I don't know if that was.
No, I'm just not one of those people that can connect music like you can. I'm just kind of like amazed and astonished at you two, because I know sometimes I hear music from one movie to a next, but I can never pinpoint exactly where it's from, and I can never just pinpoint just a few notes. So I'm like completely amazed at you.
Well, I mean, keep in mind, I love The Godfather, so it's a very easy comparison for me to make, and it's probably, to be fair, a very tenuous comparison, but I don't know. I feel like that's because it's opera, and I don't know. So it's like the theme is kind of similar, and even if you like, they're like if you listen to Speak Softly, Love, the lyric version of the Godfather love theme, the lyrics are different. But there's still sort of a similar, kind of thing going on. So I don't know. But
I'll say for my part too, when I work, I like to, a lot of times if I'm writing or something, I like to listen to music that doesn't have words in it, because words mess with me. So I listen to a lot of movie themes when I'm listening to music. So I have so many movie themes in my head.
Well, what I feel this music really does, like this is like a really moving ending. Like you really feel emotional if you're engaged with it by the end, and you're not like, you know, trying to guard yourself against what the movie wants you to feel. And I feel like that music is a really big part of of bringing that emotion to the surface. You know, again, maybe that's just because I'm making that Godfather connection, and that's a song that has that kind of meaning for me. But I really I like much more like Hero. I noticed the music and I like the music, and it's was it Tundun, the guy? I think he did the music in he might have done Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon as well. I can't remember, but I find this a lot more moving than that music. I found this to be
definitely
this didn't feel like that. Felt very like gravity was dragging that music down. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this has like a I don't know. This is sort of like soaring music. So I don't know. Any other thoughts on the movie? Like, how would you guys compare it to Hero?
I would say this is more of a wuxia movie than Hero was. Not to start this debate again.
I think that's a perfectly fine debate to have on Wuxia Weekend. So I say go for it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something about like this movie. I really like the sort of the melodrama here between the characters and seeing everybody's sort of dilemmas and trying to guess at their motivations. I don't know. There's just something about seeing more of the world as well, and getting a hint of lore rather than being given a backdrop for everything to happen against. Makes it more interesting because ultimately we still know very little about the House of Flying Daggers, and we there's still a lot of information that's sort of buried just under the surface that we can't quite get to, and it just leaves me wanting a bit more to know a bit more as well. How did what else do they do these dagger techniques of theirs? Can they do the government actually find people who actually can counter their techniques in the end? And there's also little sort of Jianghu things like that which are more present in this movie than they were in Hero.
And this one go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh no, you can go ahead because my point sort of is a slight detour.
So is mine. So I was thinking that I like this movie much more than Hero, just because I think I was more invested in what happened to the characters and their relationships. I felt like I was not part of the movie, but I was sucked so far into the movie that I really cared about what happened. Well, to Jin especially, because he was my favorite character. But I really cared what happened to the relationships. I did want to find out more about the House of Flying Daggers. I don't feel like I got enough about them, but that's okay because the movie wasn't really centered around them. It was centered around these three people, and you're so invested in them that when May dies at the end, plus the music, really, I cried harder on this one than I did for Hero. Hero was definitely, I shed some tears at the end. But this one was almost a bawling kind of, you separated the lovers. You can't do this to me. Even though I knew that was going to happen. But I was definitely more heart pulled into it than Hero.
And one thing I wanted to add as well, I think that the lack of a clear message that this movie wants to convey is also part of the reason why I like it a bit more. Whereas in Hero, there's always the whole we talked about the politics in Hero. We mentioned it briefly anyway, and there's like the message trying to communicate that for the sake of the land type of thing. It's a bit too grand for me as a wuxia thing. Whereas here, it's just they're trying to investigate a leader of a sect, and they fall in love with people, and people fall in love with each other, and they all try to kill each other, and it's definitely it's on a more personal level, which I usually associate more with wuxia.
Well, I think it's also kind of interesting because in the last film, it's all about sort of the king unifying China, and the assassins giving up the fight because they think it's in everybody's best interest for the unification. And then this movie is sort of, in a way, I mean, it's, dynasties later, so I mean, you've had a lot of things happen. You've had transitions into different dynasties, but it's, it's sort of, this is sort of ultimately kind of where that, ultimately where it sort of leads to is this this conflict between the House of Flying Daggers and the Emperor. And I think when you get to the third film in the movie, that's when you get maybe, like, again, I'm not that big into doing political readings into films when I watch them, but I think if you're gonna read Hero politically, you should read all three of these movies together as one thing. And I think when we get to the third one, if you guys haven't seen it yet, you'll kind of know what I mean by that when we get there. But yeah, I agree with you though. This one doesn't feel like you're not getting kind of hit over the head with a message while you're watching it, and you're kind of there for the wuxia adventure, and I think that was maybe the element, because I know you had mentioned that Hero didn't feel like proper wuxia to you, and I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, well, the big difference to me in these ones is this one has a much more of an adventure at the core of it. Like two martial heroes on the road together is an adventure, and you're following them the whole way. And the other one was just so much more stately and told from multiple points of view, and so it was just, I don't know, it was a little bit, it wasn't as neatly sort of, here's a story from beginning to end. And
yeah, I think in the Hero it's more like we were dropped into a scene, basically. There's no sort of sense of transition between them. Like, we're dropped into the scene where he's demonstrating his skills in the library, and then we're dropped into the scene where they're fighting in the Qin camp, and then we're dropped into the scene where they're talking to the Emperor again. And it's all sort of like, yeah, it's all very discrete feeling. Whereas in House of Flying Daggers, it's all very smooth. We get scene transitions and it feels like it's more of a flow than Hero did.
And
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Adam.
I was gonna say, as an additional thought too, it's definitely a movie to plan to watch twice if you're going to watch it. I don't think it's a movie you can just watch once and really, get everything from it. Just because going back and watching the early parts when you've got the knowledge you get later in the movie gives so much more to it.
You can really appreciate Andy Lau's acting. Like, I really like Andy Lau as an actor. He's most famed for being one of the four heavenly kings of Hong Kong canto pop, but his acting skills are not to be underestimated.
Yeah, we should do a movie at some point that is sort of an Andy Lau vehicle, just so we can focus on that. But yeah, I don't know. I thought he did a great job, and I agree with Adam. You really do have to watch it twice, because all the stuff you learn at the end will inform your impression of the earlier scenes when you watch it the second time, and even the third or fourth time, because you kind of are really looking for details. I don't think I noticed the smirk on Andy Lau's face in the Peony Pavilion until like the third or fourth time that I saw the movie. And they're just, because they're kind of subtle. And there's even one scene where Jin is sort of boasting when they're coming up with the plan of him pretending to rescue her, that he'll like talking about what how he's just like a conqueror of women, how he's just he's and you would think, knowing what that Andy Lau is going to be furious, but he's laughing and smiling, but there's this look in his eye that I think kind of betrays what's going on with the smile. And so, but it's a lot more subtle, and it took me a while to kind of catch it. But yeah, I don't know. We're coming past the hour mark, so any other thoughts? Or all right, so we'll be back next week. We're going to come back with Curse of the Golden Flower, which is the third in this sequence of films by this director, and I will warn everybody. Number one, it's a very different movie from these two. It's not like these. The thing that is supposed to kind of tie these together is they're all sort of his ventures into wuxia, but I think it's, of the three, it's the one that probably feels the least wuxia, because there's so much court intrigue and stuff. There is fighting, but and the fighting is pretty impressive, but it's not as, how can we say, it's not as it's not like House of Flying Daggers. It's not like fight sequence after fight sequence. It's a very compelling movie. It's a very weird and disturbing movie too, and I'll explain to you guys after the podcast what I mean by that. But I think it's going to be an interesting one. And then I think, are we doing Painted Skin after that? Is that the film that we're going to round out the month with?
Yes.
All right, so we'll do Painted Skin, which I'm really looking forward to. And yeah, so we will be back on, and we will talk to you later.